Welcome, everybody, to the happy hour opening ceremonies for 21 Armchair Dragoons Digital Event. I'm Gary, a.k.a. Ardwulf, and I am here with Brent from the Armchair Dragoons, which is what it says down on the screen. How's it going, Brent?
It is going. I had a little bit of echo there. I apologize for that, but I do have to say that I got to admit, Mo's intro music is a little more rocking than yours was.
Oh, mine sucks. Mine is generic garbage StreamYard stuff because, as I explained, I am lazy and have not put anything together. Perhaps I will use that dreadful Battle Hymn of the Republic that I had offended my entire stream community with several weeks ago. That's like 9 minutes long.
Well, not just that it was 9 minutes, that it sounded like it was recorded in a culvert underneath a road.
Oh, it may have been. It is the generic StreamYard 30-second countdown music.
Yeah.
So again, work in progress.
That was fairly painful.
So Brent is coming to us live from the Gamers Armory in wherever, North Carolina. So
officially the mailing address is Cary, North Carolina, but that's like telling people you're in Grandview, right? It's Columbus. Down here, it's Raleigh, right? It's attached to Raleigh. If you were driving from Raleigh to Cary, unless you saw the sign that said "Welcome to Cary," you wouldn't know you'd changed towns.
Right.
But yeah, we thought we'd do something a little different. Gamers Armory is back open this week. They just reopened the gaming space, so we've got the gaming space back here, and I'm actually sitting in the gaming space, which is kind of cool because I'm not.
That is a generous gaming space too.
It is ginormous, actually. It is El Grande. This used to be many moons ago a pizza joint, so they had to have a lot of space to put the eating, and so the front half of the store is all the shop racks, and we're gonna take a look at some of those here in a little bit. We're gonna see if we can't drive the audience insanely jealous with what's on the racks here at Gamers Armory.
So how long has Gamers Armory been around anyway?
So Scott started it as an online thing that was primarily catering to the ASL audience 15, 18 years ago or so. I mean, it's been a while. Okay. As a physical location, it's been open a little over 10 years. Okay. And this is actually the second of the two locations. The first one was across the street. I mean, literally across the street from where I'm sitting. And they just outgrew the space. They needed more space, especially for all the gaming they were doing. And part of it was, you can see the terrain board here behind me. They have a pretty substantial minis community here in the Triangle area. And a lot of them come over here on Tuesday nights. Well, they did when there wasn't a plague. We'd have pretty regular Tuesday night minis gaming over here that was pretty substantial. And so it was El Grande. So, however, one of the challenges that I have, and so Gary's going to have to pull double duty tonight, because I'm at the store, I can't be doing alcohol for the happy hour. So I've got the mandatory caffeine, and Gary's going to have to drink twice the scotch. So, and
I have filled the glass twice as full. So
yeah, and
I'm already on top of this plan.
Yeah, Gary's not going to shy from that challenge.
I've had a reasonably intense week, so I am cool with drinking scotch on Friday night.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's after 6 p.m. and everything. I did admittedly start drinking before 6 p.m., but it's after 6 and everything.
Yeah. Everybody should be cool with drinking scotch on a Friday night. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So Tuna saying that he didn't know there was a real convention going on at the same time. There might be a real in-person something somewhere, but this isn't an actual convention here at Gamers Armory. This is just a bunch of folks kind of hanging out, shopping around because they all got off work and wanted to come over here and spend some money. And you can't blame them, right? If you're going to support a game store, support a good one.
I mean, part of the value added for local game stores nowadays, this was always true, but it's even more true now that you can probably get your games at as good or better price online, is the community aspect that a live game store brings. There are people there who play games, and probably whatever weird game you like, there's probably somebody there that likes it too. Yeah. So it's a place to network. It's a place to meet people. It's a place that people have space. Like I can't really have games here. So when I could go up to the guard tower, which I don't know if you know this, has opened a second location over on the east side of town. So
I knew they'd open one. I've never been to it. I've only been to the original one.
Yeah, it's all you long gone by the time you left town. But I think, actually, I'm not 100% sure that we have had an Origin since they opened. So since last Origins got canceled and this one's pushed back to September.
Yeah.
So
No, this one does some pretty significant business. Wednesday night is a board game night plus your regular RPG league play. Friday Night Magic they do in here. So if you're into the collectible stuff, plenty of that going on. They used to do first Sunday of every month was always a big war game day. There was a ton of ASL in here plus a lot of other stuff that was getting played. But I mean, we tried to get a war game day started here 10, 12 years ago, right before Scott opened the store, actually. We were booking rooms at different libraries around the area, and we tried to move them around so that nobody had a long drive on any one of them. We got up to where we had about 14, 16 people showing up.
It's really not bad.
No, it really wasn't bad at all. And that doesn't count like dragging along the kids or anything. Like we had 14 to 16 legit players all showing up.
Okay.
But the other thing that we do have in the area, so here's the deal. I am convinced that the Triangle area here has as many board gamers as you guys have up there in Columbus with cabs.
Oh, I think you'd got more, probably.
Maybe. And if you toss in the minis, guys, yeah, we've got y'all beat. Here's the problem. We suck at getting organized around here. Right? I mean, cabs took a long time to get the traction going, but cabs is kind of a self-sustaining organization at this point that they can consistently pull in 100 people for a meeting on just a straight Friday night. Like that's a decent convention in most towns, and that's Friday in Columbus.
Yeah, that's every week.
Yeah, we're not that organized here. What we do have, though, is a bunch of wargamers on there. Peter Robbins is down here in the area. The guy from Wargame HQ is here. Gimpy Gamer is here in the area. So at some point, we're going to see if we can't get a whole bunch of us together here and turn on the camera and play a game and just
got at least 4 publishers right there.
Yeah.
As well. In the general, within 150 or 100 miles anyway.
Yeah. So we've got plenty of folks. Ray Farrell is about an hour and a half down the road. Rick Young used to be right down the street here, and he's unfortunately moved out of town. And Bruce Garrick used to be in Chapel Hill, half hour down the road, and unfortunately he's moved out to the left coast. But that's what I'm saying. Like we've got a good crowd of folks around here. We just suck at getting organized.
Well, somebody's got to step up and do it. That's the thing with here is somebody did that 25 years ago, whatever it was, right? So
yeah,
and it grew. I mean, they didn't start out as a club that would draw 100 people every weekend. Pre-plague, of course, reliably draw 100 to sometimes 300 people every weekend. They presumably started out in somebody's basement, right? And I probably met that person.
Yeah.
In fact, I have, in fact, met those people. But and by and large, they're all still around. And they pretty much started with war games, right? More so than general board games.
Yeah, I think so. As I recall, and again, I know who a bunch of those folks are from having been a cabs member when I lived in Columbus. So, I know who a bunch of those folks are. Chester is right. Cabs is flipping awesome. They are very cool. To answer Tuna's question, I'm near Chapel Hill in that Chapel Hill is near me. It's a half an hour down the road. It's on the other side of Durham. It's not that far. It's all one big triangle area here. So, but yeah, that's where we are here. And so just now that Gamers Army's open again, I went and talked to the manager, asked Mike, hey, we're doing this happy hour thing. Do you care if I broadcast from here? He said, don't bring any booze and stay put when you don't have your mask on. And here we are. And so this may go really cool. This may turn into a train wreck. I have no idea. But
well, we're not going to, I'll just cut you off if something really bad happens.
Yeah, so we're going to give it a try and see. In a few minutes here, we're going to walk around a little bit of the store. I'm waiting for some of the customer count to actually go down a little bit, so I'm not tripping over people while I'm walking the laptop around. But we're going to show off a little bit of the store here. Yeah, we'll see. I think I can still be heard.
Yeah, that's actually not bad.
Yeah, well,
I had a comment on conventions, which of course, we're so we talked about this on the stream with Dan a week or two ago. I don't think that the virtual convention is going away after the pandemic subsides and we are back to a normal slate, which isn't this year, but hopefully next year of in-person events. I think we're still going to have a pretty robust selection of online, digital, virtual, whatever conventions. Because it's just so damned convenient. Yeah. I mean, there's no better bang for your buck in the convention experience. You can take a couple of days and, not have to drive anywhere, not have to pay for hotel, not have to pay for evenings out, not have to pay for plane tickets or gas or whatever it is. So it's just so convenient. And it's also because you don't have to rent a physical space. economical for the convention organizers. So you can do things like, say, it's $5 for the entire 5 or 10 or whatever it is for the entire event, and you don't have to pay like an a la carte fee for events or whatever like that. So you can get tons of quality gaming in without spending tons of money and without having to leave the comfort of your chair.
Yeah, and I will tell you, when we were trying to figure out what to call these things, because the first one, like the reason we ended up with virtual Dragoons Assembly last summer is we'd been talking about doing a Dragoons Assembly, an in-person thing for a bunch of the Dragoons, not as a convention, just a whole bunch of us were going to find somewhere geographically roughly in the middle and get together and just play games and drink scotch all weekend. And
that'd be cool. I'm up for that.
Yeah, well, and our problem, and I think you were on the list originally of people we were talking about doing this with. The challenge we run into with Origins is we're so busy being GMs, we don't actually get to sit down and play and just hang out with each other.
Man, those are long days.
Yeah, and you can't have scotch in the exhibit hall either. So that
oh yeah, you can. I beg to differ.
As an official organization who is suffering under the rule of Gamma, I can't have scotch in there.
I of course would never endorse such flouting of the perfectly reasonable Gamma rules.
Yes, and wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But we're going to try not to get ourselves thrown out of the exhibit hall if we are the game hall.
That would be good. I don't care how much scotch you had. You could not be more obnoxious than the folks running the pro wrestling card games that were literally busted. They were like body slamming people onto tables and breaking folding tables in half. It was unreal. One of the conversations I had with the Gamma guys afterwards, I said, "Can you just put me a long way away from them next time?" And the response was, "We've heard that from so many people that they're going to have to be in the parking garage if they come back." So, yeah, no kidding. A downside of trying to pack absolutely everything you can in one giant exhibit hall. Yeah. So we had talked about this whole Dragoons Assembly, that we were just going to get a bunch of us together and play games. Well, but then we the plague shut everything down, and so we ended up we had the virtual Dragoons Assembly. We just slapped virtual in front, except it was a stupid name. And so we were trying to come up with something else. And the ACDC is not the perfect name, but it's catchy. People remember it. But I will say there was a strong showing of support for calling this the Pajama Con. The Pajama Con, why not? No Pants Fest. One of these days, it will not be occurring on the show this evening. I'll have to tell you, Brent, about the Men Without Pants party. Yeah, well, the problem with the Pajama Con is it wasn't wargamey enough. That there were too many different things that the Pajama Con could have been about, and so we wanted to be a little careful about that. So, yeah, but Bob's right. Virtual can be a blast. There's a lot of fun we can have. Yeah, but you do miss. There is that sort of social thing, though, that I'm going to actually credit Harold Buchanan for coming up with this, where Harold ran the San Diego Historical Games Convention this year and next year as well, where he had like a morning session that was just people hobnobbing in a video chat. So we have those each of the next 2 mornings. Yes. We totally shamelessly ripped that idea off from Harold. Thanks, Harold. Appreciate it. Thank you, Harold. We did those last ACDC back in January. We got a half a dozen or so people pop in, so it was cool to have them. We got Andrew Rowland dialing in from Australia, so it was at the end of the day for him. He's sitting I insist that his video be rotated upside down when he calls in. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't know if OBS will do that, but I bet I could make it happen. But yeah, we keep that all in Discord and just hang out and have a chat in the morning for about an hour as everybody gets ramped up for the show. So we do have, and one of these days people are actually going to use them. We do have some just general voice channels. If anybody wants to just have a chat about something, hey, who wants to talk about OCS? Meet me over in this voice channel, and then just go over there and have a conversation, guys. It's there for you. So Central Ohio is being well represented in the audience so far. Central Ohio or former Central Ohio, definitely. Folks in Central Ohio were planning to be playing games this weekend. Who saw that coming? I mean, go figure. The Cavs is meeting again. I don't know if you heard. I've seen. I don't know. I still follow them. How that logistically is working, I haven't really checked because I'm probably not going to try to go until sometime next month. But they are meeting again. Yeah, I've seen pictures of the tents out behind Mossel.
Hey, look, it's they're like everything else, right? They're falling back on that Marine mantra of adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Yeah.
And that's what we've all tried to do. And I get it. Everybody's sick of staring at the Brady Bunch screen all day long because we're doing it for work. And now, why would you do that for fun? Except that this is the closest we're going to get to a bunch of wargamers hanging out and BSing.
At least right now, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, like some of the most fun that we have at Origins is not sitting down necessarily playing the games. It's sitting down and hanging out with people we like while we're playing the games. That the wargaming media panel that we put together, I think it was 3 years ago that we did that. That was a lot of fun. That was a bunch of the audience took a little while to trickle in, but it was a lot of fun. It's just like the four of us sitting around BSing with each other until people start wandering in.
Pretty much.
It was a good time. So
I think I put the announcement in the announcements channel. Let me throw it in.
I know.
Well,
our buddy Mad Max has put the stuff in the announcements channel. He's now got Seshbot fully running that we're making announcements that say, "Hey, this is starting now. Here's where to go find stuff."
Okay, so for those who have not yet signed up for the convention itself, and who are just now maybe checking it out,
freeloading
in the video description for the Armchair Dragoons page, where you can check out the entire fairly aggressive schedule of events for the rest of the weekend. So do check that out if you have not done so already. The trouble is, Brant, that there's so many channels that I am having a lot of trouble finding mine.
Yes.
So
I'm sorry. Your Ardwulf talk shows. You're there.
Yeah. I know. I know who I am. That's not the problem. I'm not that drunk yet.
Yeah. So it's that tough mix between, do we dump everybody into one place or do we separate things out, and how granular do we separate things out? And so where I've got publishers there, we've grouped the publishers together. So you can see Academy Games, Lock and Load, those guys are grouped together. Otherwise, it's kind of by GM, because that's the name that people get when they register for the game. Right. So Andrew Buchholz is here GMing 3 different games. We stuck them all in Andrew's room. And so that way it's a little easier to find. We were hoping it was a little easier to find those rooms. The event descriptions in tabletop.events, when you register for them, it tells you which room you're looking for in the Discord. Right. That doesn't mean people are paying attention. Like, I get that. Gamers don't read the rules. I know that.
Or they read it when they signed up a week ago, and now they have to check it again, right?
Yes. But yeah, that's kind of the best we could do for sort of figuring out how to organize this stuff.
This is true. Jeff is right. I do have a Discord server. Right now it's invite only, but if somebody really wants an invite, email me at ardwulfslair@gmail.com. Eventually I want to open it up to general audience.
Yeah. And we have a Dragoons general purpose Discord server as well that's actually fairly active. We've got a decent crowd that's there on the Discord server. We didn't really hide it. If you go to our forums and scroll to the very bottom, there's a link to the Discord server. We didn't really hide it. We just don't make a big deal out of it, so we don't get too many asshats wandering in. Look, the forums are sort of where the core Dragoons audience is kind of based out of, but we recognize that there are a lot of different ways you can engage with folks, and we are far more active on Twitter than any previous site I've ever worked at. We are far more active on Discord than any other site I've previously worked with. That's just us reflecting the reality of how people prefer to engage with us. And as long as people are having a good time talking about war games, I don't give a rip where you do it.
And Discord is a wonderful tool in general. I mean, it certainly has its limitations and oddities, but it's a great tool, and it's really versatile and works really well for the most part. If you're trying to broadcast out of it, it starts to get a little flaky. But if you are just hanging out, it actually works kind of great.
So if you're trying to drive a broadcast like to YouTube or something, it's a real pain in the ass. But if you're if you're streaming the game you're playing this weekend so that people can just sort of do the digital equivalent of walking around and looking over people's shoulders, it's going to work fine for that. We're not going to have 80 people in any one of those rooms. So you're going to be okay doing that. Somebody made a crack about Cyrano's not going to use it room in the Discord, those things were going to automatically get programmed just with tabletop.events tying into the Discord server. It builds the channels for us, which is kind of cool.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Oh, hell yes. Yeah. But Cyrano uses Steam Chat for all the voice on his stuff.
Right. I can tell.
So he never uses the Discord. So I figured truth in advertising, Cyrano's not going to use it in Discord.
Well, I mean, he has got his own cadre of folks that do his stuff. So if they're comfortable with Steam Chat, good. That's great.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move the headset around so I can pull the mask up. The crowd has gone down in here a little bit. We're going to walk around the store for a second and take a look. And we're going to try to do this as best we can with a laptop camera that's built in. We're going to see what we can do here.
Right. Show us the goods.
So, Gary, here's the question. Do we want to start or end with the
No, you're fine. I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, Charlie Brown's
No, finish. Get to the ASL wall last.
Okay, we will get to the ASL wall the last. All right, so we're going to start. I'm going to wander my way up to the front of the store here. I feel like I should have a selfie stick. Yeah. And Mike disappeared. I was going to have Mike totally wave at the camera here. I don't know where Mike went. He's in the office.
Is he camera shy? Is that the problem?
Oh, God, no. So, yeah, here's us walking in. And there's a ton of mini stuff up front. Mm-hmm. There's Mike. We're going to go.
Totally looks like it used to be a pizza parlor.
Yeah, it totally did.
I'm in the shower.
Yeah, okay, Mike, wave from the shower. So Mike's the manager here at Gamers Armory, and he was the one crazy enough to let us try to do this. So, so there he is. I don't know how many people we got watching anyway.
Hi, Mike. 41 at the moment.
41. We're up to 41 people watching. Good. All right. So this wall is the game library that you can actually check out and play stuff here. That's the library that I used the summer that I ran a summer camp out of here for a week.
Right. Is that half ASL too?
No, it is actually not. All the crazy dice, because you got to keep the dice in a cabinet like they're valuables or something. Tons of minis racks. This is all the fantasy stuff up front. We'll get to the Wargame minis stuff here in a second. And I'm sure I'm giving the audience vertigo. I hope nobody's trying to eat while we're doing this. This is a lot of X-Wing and Fantasy Flight stuff and a lot of collectible card games. Not collectible, but living card games. The new stuff, there we go. Napoleon's Imperium.
Very good. Very nice. That's Andrew's magnum opus.
Yes. We've got Storm Above the Reich. So up towards the front of the store, that's the rack of puzzles. We're going to avoid that one for a moment. Lots of Eurogame-ish stuff.
Gamers Armory is in Cary, North Carolina.
Somebody was asking. Okay.
Yes.
Gamersarmory.com. No apostrophes, no spaces, no nothing. They do online ordering. One of the other things they do here is pretty much everything is 10% off MSRP across the board.
Very good.
So big rack of current role-playing stuff. They do not do used role-playing stuff here.
Okay. They still have a better selection than the Guard Tower has.
Yeah. There's Pathfinder, Starfinder, other stuff like that. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to wander through all the Eurogame stuff because the people here don't care that much about it. So,
I'm guessing we all know. We'll just say there are Eurogames there too. And,
yes.
And our audience here this evening will probably be satisfied with that fact.
Probably. There's some of the magazine stuff.
Oh, hey, if they have a C3I number 28, grab it for me. I'm sure they don't. It's been out of print for like 5 years.
Here's one cool thing about Gamers Armory. They got Hollandspiel stuff on the rack.
I just saw that. Now, Hollandspiel, for those who don't know, is printed on demand, so very few game stores actually carry it.
And White Dog games on the on the shelf.
And White Dog, so, same deal, same printer, in fact.
Same printer, yeah. The way they've got these racks organized is they go up in era. So we're looking at Ancients right now. Here's Age of Gunpowder. So again, we're not talking, small potatoes here. This is not.
My OCD thoroughly approves of this organizational system.
Yes. And again, we're not talking, the token 2 or 3 Columbia block games on the shelf.
I saw a Labatt title down there.
Yes, there was a Labatt title. Here is Gary trying to figure out how many of these he doesn't have yet.
Oh, I have all of those. Thank you, Brent.
Okay. They got shipped to Gary.
Yes.
But yeah, so now we're heading up into World War One again. More knowledge wheel stuff. We have a little Belgium, which you can play with the designers this weekend. And now we're up into World War II stuff. And somebody from the audience chime in, like, can you see these worth of crap? I mean, is this?
I can make them out, but I can like smell war games at garage sales and stuff, so I can.
Yeah. So I'm going to wander away from the tabletop board game stuff for just a second, because that's one of the Flames of War racks. That is just one of the Flames of War racks. And then we've got Battletech Malifaux War Machine, lots of it. Because again, huge minis community here, which is why there is a giant wall of paint among. Here's more Warhammer stuff.
Isn't that? I don't know where that is actually.
Yeah, and then all the Warhammer Age of Sigmar stuff. So again, huge minis community here in town. So
yeah, we have people saying that if they have Empire of the Sun, they will drive there to that store and buy it tonight.
Let's see.
So
I'm checking for you. As
3-inch box. It's in a 3-inch box.
Yeah, I know. Holland 4. Okay, so it's not on this side of the World War II rack. Let's check the other side of the World War II rack.
I think it's out of print again, actually.
That
doesn't mean you won't see it in retail necessarily.
So doesn't look like it. They do have, again, DBG stuff on the rack. They do have Day of Days down here. I'm not seeing an Empire of the Sun, though. Sorry.
Okay.
So
now, I guess we're saying no. I believe Empire of the Sun third printing is out of print, and we will end up getting a reprinted probably before too much longer. But that's probably next year, realistically. At least.
This is, well, here's still some more World War II stuff, because here's like all the Wing Leader expansions, and then we get down into the modern stuff.
There's a whole shelf of Gregory M. Smith solitaire designs there.
Yeah.
Just Korean War and modern stuff, Vietnam and Cold War.
Gary thinks is a fantasy war game.
Yes, exactly. It's a sci-fi science fantasy game.
All right, so we're gonna.
I like to play the Jedi units in that game personally.
Slow review. We're gonna have a slow reveal of the ASL wall here, so we're starting.
And then sit down, because with your
kits.
camera moving, we're getting camera lag because the webcam is having trouble keeping up with it.
All right, I will
show us the goods.
A little more still. Yeah, so this is all still official MMP stuff. As we're looking through here, we get the ASL annuals, but again, this is all official MMP stuff. Here's all the winter offensive stuff from pretty much every winter that's ever had. Last Hurrah. Like, I'm not an ASL dude, but
Last Hurrah, which has been out of print for decades. I don't know. I mean, they pop up from time to time.
Not here. Now we start to get into the weird stuff. Again, this is all ASL expansion stuff.
Oh, I can smell the critical hit from here.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to have the fun part. I'm going to try and go slow with this. Here we go. Texas ASL.
The Texas ASL group.
CBI Lost Theater stuff.
I see Bounding Fire.
Are all different expansion packs. Yeah. Here's the Schwerpunkt guys. I think this is all the Tampa ASL dudes through here.
Yeah, I have no idea where they are.
Every one of these things, these are all different volumes, right? This goes all the way back from volume 1 up through 23. So, I'm reading Tampa group on the bottom of the page. So
I'll take your word for it. I have no idea.
Truth in advertising.
We are deeper in the ASL nerd well than I typically go.
Yeah, Lone Canuck Publishing is doing a bunch of these things. Here's the Rally Points, again, more Tampa ASL group. And then we get down here into stuff nobody's ever heard of. But everything on this wall, and I'm going to back up for the full experience here. That's the wall of ASL right there.
It's a lot of ASL stuff.
So
it's more ASL stuff than I got. I'll tell you that.
Wall, you're out 4 figures. It's a lot.
Oh, handily.
A lot of ASL stuff.
Probably not low.
Go sit down. So
he's Giannis correct.
Probably not, because
it is
handful of these packs are all in the 120s and above. So
yeah, it's I mean, I don't even know about the Schwerpunkt stuff, but the Bounding Fire Poland in Flames is like $100 or something like that. So it's a lot of play value in that stuff. So
most of the Tampa ASL stuff only runs like $20-$25 a piece. The problem is there's like 40 of them.
Yeah, the thing is there are literally packs of photocopies of scenarios that they printed up. So their cost to print is probably less than $1 a
but
piece.
somebody went through the trouble of publishing these things
and stocking them. So it's probably safe to say that no other retailer that I'm aware of has as comprehensive an ASL selection as that. Certainly not the third party stuff. I mean, it's hard even finding the MMP stuff now. I was looking at Cool Stuff today, and they have zero MMP product in stock right now, which I have to assume means that they're not carrying MMP anymore. Miniature Market doesn't carry MMP and actually never has, as far as I'm aware. So, and the Hollandspiel and the white. Yeah, Stigler would like to see. He would like to show us the decision game section. It's a running gag.
He's going to have to drive himself to Bakersfield for that.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yes. So when Scott first started the online piece, his whole shtick was, if it's ASL, I've got it. Like that was how he built the business originally. Was built it on the backs of ASL folks, and so he has carried that forward. That, again, as you've said, there's probably no other retailer with as comprehensive a collection of ASL products as Scott has, but that's because he's made that a primary cornerstone of what he does. So again, when we're talking about who's got really good local war game stores, and I keep telling people, hey, Gamers Armory is pretty cool, and I'm lucky it's in my backyard. You just kind of saw what's in my backyard.
Yeah.
So, I'm jealous. They're 10% off MSRP. They're 10% off MSRP across the board. I know I sound like an infomercial for them. Scott's a friend, but it's a kick-ass store, and it's great to have war game stores like this out there. And so it's one of those support them wherever you have them so that you don't lose them kind of a thing. So
I'm definitely jealous. So because we don't have anything like that here in Columbus. I mean, it's nice that war game communities we have here in Columbus. We don't have a store like that.
The soldiery was close at one point, but that's
been a long, try 25, Brent. So
they were close when I still lived there. I mean, they weren't quite this big, but they had a decent collection back when I lived there.
Yeah, I mean, so they still sell. So to be fair, they still sell war games. They pretty much get in new GMT stuff, and they have a smattering of old warehouse contents from Excalibur games and Spitzer and stuff like that. So it has, I mean, I've been in town for almost 15 years now. As terrifying as that's, probably 13, but yes, I mean, it's been a long time that where it was at one point. It had a robust war game selection, but it's really hard to find, right? I mean, the number of like brick and mortar retail shops with really strong war game selections is probably something like 10 or 15 in the whole country.
And we've got one of them.
Yeah, Cleveland has one of them, but we don't down here for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, that's because Cleveland rocks.
So apparently.
Well, so the way the store's laid out, there's two rows of those big wire racks that I was showing you guys, and the two rows, the one towards the front is more Eurogame, family game, puzzles, kids games kind of stuff, and the far end of it is where you find the Warhammer and Flames of War and tech stuff. The back row, aside from the one rack at the end that's role-playing stuff right next to the wall with the role-playing stuff, the rest of that's all war games. And again, it goes up it goes roughly up in chronological order. And they've got so many racks of war games at this point that they've got one of them pushed up against the wall, and that's where all the modern war game stuff is, just because they don't have enough room to cram that one in with all the others and still have room to walk around. And that doesn't include the wall of ASL, because that's on the wall. That's not on one of those big standing racks that they can move around.
Right.
So yeah, again, am I showing off a little bit? Yeah, that was kind of the point of broadcasting from here tonight.
I'm happy to show it off. I think it's probably safe to say that at least one or two people watching this evening, or who will watch the stream after the fact, will end up going, "Oh, hey, I can drive there. It's only 2 hours away. Let's do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and again, there's a decent wargaming community around here that's largely minis based, but there's a good tabletop game crowd around here. For wargaming, or Scott wouldn't be able to stay in business, but he does do mail order stuff, and lots of folks have had stuff sent out to him.
Yeah, they have a pretty good website too. So,
yep, definitely.
Yeah, I refuse to call it Matrix, because Matrix is the store in Sheffield Lake that's not there anymore. Why they paid Jack? There's a whole thing going on with that I don't know why they handed Jack some money to put Matrix on the sign. They had already been in business for 15 years by then. So
yeah.
Anyway,
so John, outside of sports season here in the Triangle, this is a very corporate sort of area, so there's not a ton to come see and do here. But Guilford Courthouse and a handful of other Civil War and Revolutionary War battlefields are within a 2-hour drive of us here in the Triangle. Honestly, most folks coming down here are headed to the beach. Now we're about 2 hours from the beach, but that's what most folks are doing, is they're heading to the beach.
Or they came down for North Carolina barbecue, which is, in my opinion, the best barbecue in the country. I understand I'm probably in a minority having that opinion.
So just to clarify, down here in North Carolina, when you ask for barbecue, the correct answer is not barbecue what, right? It's not barbecue as a noun here is pulled pork with vinegar sauce.
Mm-hmm.
That is barbecue.
It's delicious.
Yeah. If you want Texas style pit barbecue brisket, that's fine, but you're ordering something different. If you come down here and you ask for a barbecue sandwich, you're getting pulled pork with vinegar sauce.
I think you can get that at McDonald's down there, something like that.
I don't know. I try to avoid McDonald's.
Okay.
So what we do have down here, and Gary, where the originals are because they're right around the corner from you. We have our own City Barbecue franchises down here now. So, they're not franchised; they're all corporate owned. But City Barbecue has expanded down here now. So
I didn't know that, and that's pretty good. And that's not. They do have it's kind of a non-regionally specific barbecue chain for those not familiar.
They're based in Columbus. They're right up there off of Henderson and Reed, right in that intersection area. It's primarily Texas-based pit-style barbecue. That's their key shtick. Here in North Carolina, there's actually a shirt from one of the local T-shirt places here that sort of makes fun of it. There's this divide that runs roughly up and down I-95, although it's actually a little to the west of that if you are east of that line, that's the vinegar-based barbecue area. And if you're west of that line, that's the tomato-based barbecue area.
Good barbecue, bad barbecue.
And if you're down in South Carolina, there are some pockets down in South Carolina that are still a mustard-based barbecue.
Mm-hmm. That's actually really good too.
Over in the Batesburg-Leesville area, south of Columbia, over towards Sumter in that area, you can still get a good mustard-based barbecue in a lot of those places.
I could deal with that as well.
Why, yes, I did used to live down there. Why do you ask? So, but yeah, one of these days when the pandemic is over and folks can gather at places like this and we can grab some drinks and, throw some barbecue on the table, we will have us a big war game gathering down here in the Raleigh, Cary Triangle area somewhere, and all y'all can come play with us, and it's totally fine.
That would be awesome. All we got to do, go get your vaccinations, folks, so we can have that happen soon.
Yeah, no kidding. So yeah, that's again, I hope we've managed to induce some jealousy, perhaps a little bit of rage. That would be kind of cool too. But everybody should be hopping on gamersarmory.com right now and ordering all kinds of stuff so that Mike's got work to do here. Mm-hmm. So, how's the general shopping in North Carolina? We don't sell a lot of generals. I'm not really sure what kind of general shopping you're looking for. Yes, we've got all sorts of wacky, weird boutique kinds of things here and there, and people that spend way too damn much money on stuff that you could buy anywhere else.
That's probably true everywhere.
Yeah.
Certainly true here.
One of the things, like many other places in the South, you have families that have been in the same towns and the same places on the same farms for 250, 300, 400 years. Mm-hmm. And my son went to school with some of these kids. Like when they go to the family farm down near Wilmington, like that's there's a house there that was built by somebody's great grandfather. Raleigh's a little different because it's a lot more transient and has exploded in the last 20 years that you have a hard time finding anybody who's a fourth generation Raleighite, Raleighyan, whatever we call ourselves. It's real easy to it's real easy to find folks from New Jersey around here, though. That's lots of people from New Jersey, lots of people from Pittsburgh.
They had to get out of New Jersey. That was the trick. Because everywhere is better than New Jersey.
So we've got them all here. It's what's happened.
The state song of New Jersey is Bruce. I'm not even making this up. The state song of of New Jersey is Bruce Springsteen's "Born to Run," which is about getting the hell out of New Jersey.
Yep. So the question on how far is Charlotte? It's roughly 2 hours and change. Part of that depends on where in Charlotte you're trying to get to, because Charlotte is it's not just a traffic disaster. It has actually been scientifically proven to be the biggest traffic disaster on the planet. I can send you a link to the academic article that says so. Because we were sharing it in our forums. It was kind of funny. Like, of all the cities on the planet that have the worst traffic grid, why Charlotte? But this academic paper actually lays out why. I would love to see that actually. It's in the maps thread in our forums.
So check out the Armchair Dragoons forums, folks. Link in the description.
The airport is on the far side of Charlotte, so that's a bit of a pain to get to. But if you just need to get to like the Charlotte city limits, that's not hard. And actually, the back roads are pretty damn scenic to get there. I mean, it's nice, pretty drive through there. I sound like an infomercial for North Carolina. I totally get that, but I love living here. I'm not a beach person. Somebody up thread somewhere was talking about how they were, Nordic albinos and kind of avoid the beach. I'm there with you. I would much rather go to the mountains. I have rented cabins out in Bryson City and just disappeared for a long weekend. Treb wants to tell them what CARI stands for. It's the Containment Area for Relocated Yankees. That is what the town of. But so when I first.
On the other hand, if you want hippies, tattoo parlors, and topless women, come join us here in Central Ohio.
You can get that in Chapel Hill, right? I mean, we've got that down the street. I got to NC State in 1990. That was when I started school there. From when I started school here in 1990 to when I moved back in 2007, Raleigh had doubled in size.
Well, a lot of those southern metropolitan areas, I mean, Atlanta has grown huge in the last several decades. Suburban Virginia has, I mean, to the extent that it's like completely shifted Virginia demographically. So none of that is particularly surprising to me. And a lot of folks probably find the weather agreeable. Not sure I would, but a lot of folks probably do. I mean, if you just can't stand the snow, you probably don't see much of it down there.
We generally get one snowfall per year that sticks around for a day or two. If we get one that sticks around for 4 or 5 days, that happens every couple of years. That's kind of cool. The kids have a lot of fun with it. But winter with no snowfall like this past one, not unusual. So, and like we're at a wargaming happy hour and we're talking about what it's like to live in North Carolina. But that's what Gamers Armory will do to people, right? We'll force them to reconsider their life choices on where they live.
This is in fact the Ardbeg Wee Beastie. So needs some water. It's like 60%, so it needs some water in it, but it's pretty good. If you like quite peaty. That's Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, this is straight up Diet Dr. Pepper with no frills. But that's what I got to work with.
Indiana, you have there. So supposedly, somewhere in the Indianapolis area, there is a really good game store. I don't remember what it's called. And of course, you have Gen Con and Enterprise Games is in Indy as well.
Yeah, I don't know if Enterprise has a storefront though.
I didn't think they did.
Somebody who knows, chime in the comments. I don't think they have a storefront.
Yeah, but I think there's a brick and mortar store with a retail storefront in Indianapolis. That's pretty good for war games. They're not going to have Enterprise Games level of selection, right? Enterprise is second only to Noble Knight.
No,
in terms of a volume of ancient war games ancient collectible war games that they have at exceptionally reasonable prices in a lot of cases.
On the war game side of things, I think Enterprise might have Noble Knight beat in terms of collectible and affordable. That combination, I think Enterprise might have Noble Knight beat. So
I'm not gonna. I at one point criticized Noble Knight quite a bit for their pricing, but their pricing is sometimes quite reasonable, and sometimes it's not. But what I'm seeing is that like the really high ticket items, like the marquee items, like shrink wrapped copies of Campaign for North Africa, their prices on that are not reasonable.
No.
But the prices on a lot of the stuff I bought from them are perfectly reasonable. I bought a fair amount of stuff from Noble Knight over the last couple of years, and I have never felt like raked over the coals on the price. But you're right. Enterprise games, Noble Knight has all kinds of stuff, ancient RPG stuff, whatever. Enterprise has a lot of stuff too, but they concentrate on war games and really does have a lot of war games, especially GMT, because they rep GMT. But they have all kind of stuff from, Rand to SPI to Avalon Hill to GW to whatever company that doesn't exist anymore. People's War Games, I've seen that there.
Yeah, Don also buys a lot of people's private collections. And so, like, he has Gary Gygax's signed copy of Napoleon at Waterloo.
Okay, that's crazy.
So
then again, I just remembered I have a thing that Gary gave me too. So so I guess it's a wash.
So Aaron, you're right. Just as a first stop when you're looking for things, Noble Knight's a great place to check.
And they're super their customer service is amazing. They're great, top quality people. I have no complaints whatsoever about any of the interactions that I have had with Noble Knight, even when some embarrassing local jackwagon accidentally ordered $1,600 of ASL stuff from them on my eBay account, and I had to call them and straighten that out. They were super cool about it.
I've probably told this story before, but somebody may not have. I remember when Noble Knight first started with Aaron Leader. He basically went around to a whole bunch of garage sales and bought all the used stuff he could find, and he used to post this list on AOL back when you weren't on the internet, you were on AOL, and in the gaming forums on AOL, he would post this list. Here's what I've got, and you could actually sign up for his mailing list, where he would send out the list, a couple of days before he posted it, that if you wanted to hop on them before then, you could. And so I bought a handful of things from Aaron back in this was 96, 97 timeframe. When Aaron just started out, he started out with posting mailing lists on game forums on AOL. That's how Noble Knight got its start. And
then Aaron he started buying remaindered stuff from, ADG was the one I always saw him toting around.
Yeah, well, there was a big crash in the early 2000s, the big D20 crash, that he was able to.
I like to think of it as more of a pants shitting.
Some would call it a market correction.
Yes, exactly. Well, that is exactly, in fact, what it was.
Yes. Yeah. But Aaron was able to load up inventory there and hold on to stuff. Basically, Aaron was able to sort of weaponize his mass amount of storage space to take advantage of everybody else. and it worked. Yeah.
And now they have an actual industrial warehouse that you might find, a plastics manufacturer sized warehouse. It's like, I don't know, they told me what the square footage was. It was some absurd number.
Some number you can't count to. Yeah. So I will say this. I've seen a bunch of people mention in the comments, hey, my local store has like 4 copies of something or other. And that's cool. One of the things that I would say is that the way to help increase what your store has available is to go order something from them. Are you going to pay an extra $10 over what you pay at, ordering direct from GMT? Yeah, you might. Is it worth it to start building visibility of your local wargame community such that you might find other players at some point, or the store might realize, oh, hey, there is a market for this stuff. Let me start carrying it. You might. You don't know. You might. And so, take a chance. Like go in there every 2, 3, 4 months, and instead of ordering something straight from GMT, go order it from that store. And I'm saying GMT, Compass, Lock and Load, whoever, DVG, whoever.
It'd be even better if it's, as I buy plenty from GMT, but even better if it's not GMT. Yeah, because their GMT is the biggest company making war games. They make a lot of war games, a lot of games that aren't really, war games. Yeah, they're more likely to be stocked by a store that does board games. It's very valuable information for that store to see, hey, we just sold this game from Compass or DBG or
well,
whoever, right?
The reason I'm mentioning GMT in particular, although this does apply at least to DVG for sure, and I'm pretty sure Columbia as well, is that they're actually stocked by the distributors. And so a lot of those game stores that are simply ordering from the distributors, are that's the only place they're ordering from. Now, Scott obviously isn't, or there's no way he'd have the Tampa ASL Schwerpunkt, circulars sitting on the wall here. He wouldn't have Hollandspiel and White Dog Game stuff if he wasn't talking directly to those companies. But for a lot of those stores that are only ordering from the distributors because that's all they know how to do, or that's all they're going to bother to do, those are the ones you can get from the distributors. Lock and Load isn't carried by one of the distributors right now. David's been working on that for a while. I don't know what the progress is, but right now Lock and Load isn't carried by a distributor. Neither is Hollandspiel. Worthington is not. So those guys, you're gonna if you ask the game store for those, they're going to have a hard time helping you out. So if you're simply trying to,
I'm not sure MMV is.
I don't know. But if you're just trying to increase the visibility of wargaming in your local stores, ask them what they can get through their distributors and buy something from them, even if it's not a ton, just to help increase that visibility so that the store knows, oh, hey, there's a market. There are people here that will do this. Maybe I can start doing this. Maybe you start organizing a war game night every now and then, once a month. Hey, can we get Sunday evening in the game space for 2 or 3 tables for some wargaming stuff? And nobody's going to show up the first time you do it. Guarantee it. Nobody's going to be there, but you come back the next week or the next month and the next month and the next month, and 6 months later, now people are expecting you to be there and looking for you. So it just takes that kind of continual. But look, it's the same thing we did with Origins with the wargaming program. Gary, I don't remember if you were there in 2014. If you stopped by,
no, I was a couple years later.
Yeah, so we had like 11 people show up all weekend. I'm exaggerating, but not by much. Like people were sort of walking around the gaming hall going, "Oh, hey, there's wargaming!" Like
this
they had no
here
idea.
Again.
Yeah, what do you mean there's wargaming here? And they're like, whoa, okay, so there's wargaming. So 2015, it's like, hey, where are the wargames? In 2016, it's like, where's the wargames? Like people were expecting us to be there now. And so this year, like on the heels of last year, we had some momentum. People were looking for wargames at Origins again. Last year kind of tanked that a little bit. I know it sucks, but
that's out of everybody's hands. So.
Yes, this year the move to October really kills a bunch of our manpower. You mentioned, you had Jim Ozarski on your show back on Monday, and Jim has said, look, I can't do Origins this year because of the time of year, just where it lands on the calendar. He can't do it, but we're gonna piece together as many of our normal crew as we can. We've got a couple of people that aren't part of our normal crew who have volunteered to come in and help run a couple of games, and we're gonna keep that wargame space going just to make sure that we don't lose the momentum of having a wargame space there. People had said, wargaming was dead at Origins, and in 2012, it was. They weren't lying. There was some, but there wasn't enough. And we've been able to bring some back, and we don't want to lose that momentum. At this point, people that are saying that there's no wargaming at Origins are just lying. Like there's not as much as they might want. but it's not.
I'd be happy to see more, but there's quite a bit, actually. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why. Well, okay, there's a couple of reasons why people still say that. One, they're crotchety old fools. Is one reason that does come up from time to time. And two is because they don't see it. Now, why do they not see it? Well, there's a wargaming space, run by the Dragoons, that is buried in this giant exhibit hall that is, this cavernous exhibit hall, and it's easy to miss, right? And then a lot of the wargaming that happens outside of that area happens behind the curtain in the boardroom, where if you don't have a boardroom badge, you can't get in. So, and that, of course, is run by Buckeye. I am not sure who's running that now.
I don't know if it's run by Cabs or Buckeye Game Fest.
I think that's run by Buckeye Game Fest. I could be nuts, so don't quote me on that. But which split, right? For those who don't know that.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people can fight
tax reasons. They had to split. So it's there, right? I mean, I go in one of the things I was doing every year was going into the boardroom, sometimes having to argue with the people at the gate. Look, no, you gotta let me in. Come on. And I had to call the management last time, I think, and get them involved. But I would go in and see, people playing ancient SPI stuff, people going in and playing ancient Avalon Hill stuff, people playing brand new GMT games, people playing Labatt and OCS and stuff like that. And there's typically only kind of one big war game set up in there, but it's in the boardroom, right? So you don't see it unless you're in the boardroom or unless you're like sitting behind the little gate squinting or have a pair of binoculars to see it, right? It's like, the Germans are on the move again. But thanks, Robert, for mentioning that. So we'll be back with a regular counter clipping stream this coming Monday. So, but yeah, I mean, it's still happening there, and there's odds and ends happening in various places, but those are the two places that the wargaming still does happen, and there's more of it than a lot of people think. That was kind of my mission when I started doing the Origins thing as press, was to show people there's still kind of a lot of wargaming happening here. It's just not a lot of it's not happening in an organized way, and nor is there a dedicated space for it, except that little spot on the huge Cabinets convention floor.
Yeah, and the other thing that has happened over the years is that people are looking for the wargaming up at the War College, where we're not running the game stuff up there in the War College. We'll have the different seminar tracks and speakers and things, and the Dragoons have tried to help out with keeping the count, the event count up at the War College, because they've slowly dwindled in numbers and people that are willing to come and appear and talk and do things with the War College. We've tried to help them keep their numbers up, but we're not doing the games up there. We're doing the games down on the exhibit hall floor. And part of that is quite frankly, it's the visibility thing. Yes, it's easy to get lost in the giant cavernous exhibit hall. You're absolutely right on that, Gary. But the problem is, if you're not down there, you will never get the walk by traffic, because nobody's walking around those upstairs rooms where things like the War College are. Nobody's just going to stumble across you and go, "Hey, what's that? That looks kind of cool."
Yeah, and I mentioned that on the stream Monday with Jim, was the walk by Kriegspiel traffic was people, like tons of people walked by like the dry run of Kriegspiel on Wednesday night, and we're like, well, this looks cool. How do I sign up? And we're there for the event on Thursday, or whenever it was, and a bunch of the people who were going to play had to give up their seats and be referees instead. Yeah, so which was equally fun, by the way.
We tend to fill, when we have events like that where we need a certain number for something, we'll tend to fill them up with some of our staff, and we were kicking our staff folks out, and for I want to say it was the Saturday night Kriegspiel, whatever the last one we did that weekend was. Not only did we have to kick all the staff guys out, so many people had gone and registered and actually bought tickets, even while at the show, went back to registration and bought a ticket specific to that event, that we didn't have room for people with generic tokens, which we can almost always squeeze people with generic tokens in. We literally ran out of tables to add people to that event. We had no physical space to put them. And you've seen some of the bigger CPXs that we've run. We can always find somewhere to put somebody. We could not physically fit more people into that game. We just didn't have anywhere to put them. And that, honestly, that was really damn cool. I mean, we'd never had that happen before. I mean, that's for a freaking 1826 war game at Origins, where wargaming is supposed to be dead. We ran out of room to put wargamers in a game.
Well, is that a real war game? There's no hexes or counters in that.
Yeah. So, there were counters. There were counters.
That's true. They're plastic, but there were counters. So they didn't have that authentic cardboard smell.
I mean,
but Aaron, there's a waiting list. So email me at ardwulflair@wordpress.net. I keep saying that, ardwulflair@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So you won't be near the top of the list. Let me put it that way.
That's awesome. People are now outsourcing their counter.
I think the answer to this is yes. So stay tuned for the next sale video, which I hope to have up in the next couple of weeks. By the way, the patrons will have first crack at the sale video whenever I'm done with it. So we'll talk about that on Monday. So tune in on Monday about
in time for all of them to come back into print.
Well, Army Group South won't.
Okay.
There is a thing coming from Decision, which might, I don't know what it'll be called, that is kind of repurposing the old Army Group South quad system for but they're new battles. It's not the same battles.
Okay.
So, and we play tested it. It's made of poop.
Is this Stigler's best friends reanimating the corpse
This
again?
I'm not as hard on Decision as some people, but this particular thing from Decision, unless it has shaped up very dramatically in later playtesting rounds, is made of poop.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I have a hard time really slagging too many people's war games because I have put out some legitimate crap war games under my own name, and I suffered from the lack of good development on them, and so I have a hard time really poking too much fun at people for putting out bad war games because they're all going to look at me and go, "Well, what about you?" Well, yeah, okay,
I'm going to say I think Decision puts out some good war games. You just have to be careful. I mean, they put out some stuff that's kind of sloppy, but they also put out some stuff that's either good out of the box or stuff that is good, but you have to kind of fool with it to get it to work right.
Yeah, you get a massage.
There's unfortunately too many of those.
Yeah.
So Mo is in the house. Hi, Mo. How's it going?
But
hopefully your
Mo's arena getting prepped for the hockey game. He's got a call tonight. He just wanted to
God. Okay.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Mo's other side gig is he's a hockey announcer, and so he's got playoffs, and he's got to go call a hockey game tonight.
No wonder he's good on the voice.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So that's where he's checking in from the arena. He's not kidding. He's at an arena.
Yeah. So Jeff, I assume you mean the Victory Games Hell's Highway, and I would have been at Origins 2002. I mean, I do certainly remember when there was a very substantial wargaming presence at Origins. For me, in that particular set of years, I was spending a lot of time at the Origins auction before that ceased to be a thing. And I mean, you'd have like half of every day would be war games in that auction. I mean, the auction would run for 2 full days, and sometimes it would even bleed over into Sunday morning. And you'd have like half of Friday and half of Saturday would be war games, right? And you'd have like 2 hours for computer games and 2 hours for miniatures and maybe 4 hours for RPGs, but you'd have like 6 or 8 hours a day for war games. There was so much knowledge that you'd absorb from just being in that room. Whereas like so-and-so would be talking, and who's the auctioneer? It would be, somebody that like worked on the game. Right.
Yeah.
So it was just an amazing experience that I really, really miss. I wish Origins, and it's not Origins' fault that there's no auction anymore. We've talked about that in previous shows.
Yeah. You can blame the Ohio State legislature for that one.
You can't. So. Yes. And the powerful auctioneers lobby.
Yeah. So the first Origins that I was at was 2005. And
really?
Mo's comment is actually a reply to the one right above it from Stephen Reynolds, which is actually the really funny one.
We're ignoring what Stephen is saying.
So 2005 was my first Origins. I was there as Bayonet Games. I was there as a vendor. Had no clue what the hell I was doing. But when we were there, we had a booth, and I had a buddy of mine who had the Soldier chess book that he was selling also, and a bunch of custom chessboards and stuff. And the area that we were in, we had Columbia Games was right next to us, just over the little half curtain. We had MMP directly in there. We had MMP directly across the aisle from us, giving us the stink eye the whole time. They're like, "Who are these new guys? Why are they trying to steal our business?" Dude, we were not stealing.
They were dicks. Those first couple years, I'm just talking about the people I interacted with. Yeah. It was very off-putting. MMP when they were there it was very off-putting. They acted like they didn't want to be there. They were like, "What is all this Philistine activity around us? I don't understand." It was awful.
They were totally giving us the stink eye. Like, we've got a self-published, hand-assembled war game we're selling for $15, and you guys think we're stealing your business? We had Avalanche Press, like, 2 booths down and across the aisle. We had Clash of Arms was there. GMT was still there in a huge booth. I think Against the Odds / LPS.
Yeah, huge booth manned by the likes of Richard Berg and Mark Herman that I never bothered to pay any attention to at the time. Yeah. Even though I would go and buy the stuff from them. Yeah. I didn't pay any attention to who was selling them to me.
Yeah, John Prados was wandering around the halls because John Prados was one of the few game designer names that I knew growing up, and so I'm walking around. I was actually looking for Firkin because somebody had been looking for him at his booth when he wasn't there, manning the Columbia Games booth. So I went looking for Firkin. I happened to see him when I was walking around, and I was just trying to grab him, and I realized he's talking to John Prados. I'm like, Firkin, I got to interrupt for a second. I got to engage.
The legendary Firkin Doyle.
Yeah, I got to engage in a little bit of hero worship here with John for just a moment. John looked a little weird, like is this guy about to knife me? And just told him that I grew up playing Third Reich, with my dad, and that was really kind of cool. And so John was very gracious about it all. But yeah, I mean, we were overrun by wargamers those first couple of years, the 2005, 2006, and that doesn't count like David Heath's Matrix booth back when he used to be selling the video games there. And that was the year Mark Walker rolled out the original Band of Heroes out of the Matrix Games booth. So, there were war games everywhere in 2005, and by 2008 they were all gone. So it was kind of
So a couple of observations
I didn't
out
steal
of all
a
that.
goddamn customer from them at all, and I didn't deserve to. So,
I have 10 years of origin seniority on Brant, which I'm not sure I realized until this exact moment. Secondly, hold on, I'm trying to get to come on, YouTube.
Dude, I didn't live in Columbus until 2004. I mean, I moved there the summer of 2004, and it was after.
That's no excuse. My first origins was in Philadelphia. What a hellish experience. It was like driving through like actual purgatory to get to Philadelphia to go to Origins that year. It was awful. But I just pulled up the YouTube stuff. So that's why I was distracted.
For much of the 90s, I was primarily living in the RPG world. I was not in the
Me too, actually.
I had drifted out of the wargaming world. I was not in that much. I was much more in the RPG world. Gen Con was the North Star I was hoping to follow at some point. I had published some RPG products back in the 90s and actually wrote a whole bunch of stuff back before RPG.net had lost their brains and gone totally political. I'd actually published a whole bunch of, not published through I had written a bunch of reviews for RPG.net. I've got stuff in the archives there going back to like 90.
I do too, actually. And I also don't spend, once a year I'll look at it. That's out of scope for what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, but if you go to like Vaults of Pandius, the official Mystara site that's online, there's stuff that I had written back in the early and mid 90s over at Pandius, because that's the world that I was in at the time in the 90s. I was much more an RPG guy than I was a wargame guy. I wandered back to wargaming in the early 2000s. So
and see, I was doing wargaming in the 90s, but I was more of an RPG guy. And then in the 2000s is when I kind of wandered out. And honestly, that's Multiman's fault, actually. I'm teasing slightly, but it was around the same time the wargaming vendors started to leave Origin, and therefore they were less visible to me, and therefore wargaming as a hobby was less visible to me. And the only thing that I was aware of that was still going on was ASL, right? So and I knew that because the guys I was gaming with were the ASL, like in some cases, the original ASL playtesting team. So with like names in the book. So Andrew's here from Australia. Andrew, if StreamYard would let me, I would put your comment upside down, but it wouldn't. So I will write the StreamYard development team and recommend that feature be added.
What I love about this is that with the time zone shifting, Andrew's on his way to the opening hours of this board game event in Gosford, whereas the rest of us are, getting ready to wrap up for the night.
Yeah, I'll be ready after all this scotch. I'll be ready to go to bed after the stream here. So,
and when we do our 9 a.m. wake up, social gathering tomorrow morning, Andrew will be, packing it in for the night when he pops in. So,
Jeff, Yukon is on my relatively short list of events I would like to get to someday, by the way.
Yeah. I will say, so, I've talked about this on a couple of shows before, but I'm going to throw the plug out for it anyway. Those of you in driving distance of Charlotte, Mace happens there in November every year. It's usually right around Veterans Day weekend. I know Jeff, the dude that organizes it, whenever possible, I show up at least as a journalist for a day, and try and cover it. We covered it, for the Dragoons 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. Jeff actually held Mace in person this past November, even while the pandemic was going on.
I heard that.
He had worked with the local county health folks and the hotel and figured out these are the parameters in which you can operate. They didn't sell any tickets at the door. They didn't have any vendors. Everybody's wearing masks. They had seat limits.
And he personally wiped down each attendee with antibacterial wipes.
Yeah, I think he actually had the spray wand. I think there was something about, the physical contact with the wipes, people being a little
You have to
uncomfortable
go
with
through
that.
the delousing station before you enter the convention play area.
I think Jeff was originally going to contract the TSA to wipe people down, and folks balked at that. And so, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you snort the scotch there.
The TSA groping station.
Yeah. So he
that's fantastic.
But he managed to pull off a game convention in a pandemic. So I'm expecting by November,
yeah,
Jeff will be as back to normal as you can possibly get.
I can't imagine. Part of me wants to say that was irresponsible, but part of me also has to admit that he did work with like local health authorities to make it happen.
He went to the experts and said, "How do I do this?" And they told him, and he's like, "All right, I'm going to do it."
Okay, and he did it, and it worked. And all 4 people that went there had a fabulous time. So, Command Magazine, I could be mistaken about this. I believe Command Magazine is still in publication in Japan. I believe that to be correct.
Okay.
Which would be awesome because it was a good magazine. Actually, there's a lot of good games that popped up on the pages of Command Magazine. Anyway,
I think I know who to ask, but I'm not sure that,
Well, I can't read Japanese, so even if it's true, it's of limited use to me. The information is of limited use to me, but I could always talk about it, and people who can read Japanese will be very glad to get Japanese war games.
One of our staffers just came back within the last 18 months or so from a 3 or 4 year posting to Japan with the State Department. So he would probably know.
Okay.
I shall ping him and ask. So
we have we talked about when we were going to get to this. So I'm going to corner Brant now, and we have a major announcement to make this
you are
evening.
So overselling this.
No, I don't think so. I think this is incredibly topical, actually, because please make the major announcement, and then I will tell you why I feel like this is very topical and important.
Do we dispense with the backstory and just plunge right in, or do we build up?
Plunge in, and then we can get into the announcement, and then we'll do the backstory.
So the Armchair Dragoons, starting this coming year, are going to be sponsoring our own slate of wargaming awards that are intended not as the popularity contest, but as an actual set of sort of, I don't want to say juried because that sounds a little harsh, but the curated panel of experts, curated. There you go. A solidly curated set of awards intended to actually convey upon the winners some sort of prestige beyond just, hey, you could whip up the most number of Kickstarter backers to come vote for you. And so this is not intended to be a popularity contest, although there will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in as one of several voices in this. But we are reaching fairly far and wide across the wargaming community to bring in the initial panel that's going to be putting this together. And I'll go ahead and spill the beans. Gary's one of the initial panel as a part of this.
But I'm the resident complainer.
Yeah.
So no, you're screwing that up. Don't do that.
Yeah. So
that's my role.
Part of what we're doing with all of this, though, and this is one of the key things, is we're starting fairly small on this, and we're hoping to build over time as it gains some momentum, as it gains some actual gravitas in the community a little bit. We're starting with 4 categories, and that's it. We've got a Game of the Year category. We're going to do a graphics presentation category, so best combination of maps, graphics, box art, all that stuff. Best graphic presentation category, and if you got to actually have a map to be eligible for a map something, right? But we're gonna do Game of the Year. We're gonna do best overall graphic presentation. So it's all of those things together. We are wanting to acknowledge new blood in the industry, and so we are going to have a Rookie of the Year category that is going to be a new designer, new publisher, new whatever. So we want to make it a point of calling out the rookies and the new blood in the industry. So it's not necessarily limited to a designer. It could be a designer, could be a publisher, could be a graphics person, could be a content creator potentially, but a rookie in the wargaming space. And then the 4th category, and this is probably the one that's going to cause the most hair pulling for people out there. We are wanting to sort of make it a point of acknowledging the best traditional war game out there. And so we've got this criteria, 5-6 different things that between hexes, counters, CRTs, whatever. It's got to hit at least like 4 of the 5 criteria to be eligible for that one. So for instance, up front ain't eligible for it. Never mind, it's not new, but it wouldn't have been eligible for that one. We're looking for the best traditional hex and counter type of game. And so that way, we still have a space for the people that want to acknowledge those. And that best traditional one will still be eligible for consideration for best overall new game or best game for that year. But those are the 4 categories we're going to start with, right? Game of the year, graphic presentation, rookie of the year, and traditional war game. And we've got a panel of 5 folks that are going to put the initial lists together, and that they will be the primary voices in that. We are going to have a public vote of a curated list, not a grab-ass list, but of a curated list that the public will be able to weigh in as a 6th voice, as a 6th vote on all of these other things. But the panel has final say in these things. And in the panel, we will announce who the members of the panel are, but we're not going to force them to make their votes public. That's their call, one way or the other, whether or not they want to do that. The panel's going to rotate a member or 2 every year, so that we'll always have some fresh blood on there. One of the other things that we're focusing on with this is one of those panel seats we are holding open for a college kid, right? We want younger voices represented at the table in this wargaming world. So we're holding a seat open for a college kid every year, whether they're in a wargame design program or game design program. The comments are flipping by way faster than I can keep up with them. So I'm hoping Gary's kind of.
We'll circle back. It's okay.
Cool. We are also going to hold at least 1 seat open for somebody that overlaps in the professional and practitioner world. Like, we were co-sponsors of Connections Online back in April. We definitely want the professional,
AKA Headaches Online.
Yeah.
from my chair.
Yes, from Gary's chair.
What do you mean? The next event starts in 72 seconds. Oh my God, what do I do? Proceed.
But we are going to keep a seat on the panel for somebody in the professional practitioner realm. Look, because it's the Dragoons sponsoring it, one of those 5 seats is always going to be filled by somebody from the Dragoons, and I'm trying to make it not be me as often as possible because I got enough other shit to do. So, and then I
will confirm that is an actual thing.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of other seats open out there, and Gary's in one of them, and so. Once we've finalized the panel, we know who I think 4 of the 5 are, and we're waiting for the confirmation on the 5th one. We're going to get the panel announced. But what's going to happen is the panel are going to put together the initial lists of games for consideration. And we're not going to ignore things like BGG. We're going to look and see ones that people think are really popular or highly rated through there. And not saying that we're just going to grab that list and cut and paste, but we're going to consider that as a part of what we're looking at. And we'll put together that curated list of ones that are under consideration. The public's going to get a say in it, but they're going to get a say in that curated list. And the panel deliberations, like, they're going to have to justify, hey, here's why I think this one is worthy of consideration. And that they're going to put that list together for us. Ideally, right, non-pandemic world, we want to time these awards such that we're giving them out at Origins, because Origins is kind of our anchor convention for the Dragoons. That's the one where we have the biggest presence, but that's the one where we've got the biggest overlap with the rest of the industry as well, and where we can kind of make a bit of a splash out of it. So that's ideally, we want to have all of the information put together such that we're gathering those votes and putting all that together in time to have the voting ready for Origins, and potentially have the winners at Origins with us so that, we can hand them something physically while we're there.
So for clarity, are we talking about Origins 2021 in September?
I don't think we're going to get it organized fast enough for Origins 2021. I would, quite frankly,
because that's 3 months away, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So part of the background here is going to be, and I'll let Brant opine on this, but part part of the background is that there, and I don't think I'm reaching. I've been very vocal about this personally, but other folks have been too. There was a general dissatisfaction about how the Charles S. Roberts Awards, the premier
wargame about it on our podcast,
went down last year, right? So I mean, Jim and I literally went off about this again on Monday for like half an hour. So Jim and I are on crystal clear ground here. Okay, so as far as our dissatisfaction with the way things went down. And of course, the Charles S. Roberts Awards are coming back this year, and I hope they fix the issues with them. But I'm not seeing that is happening right now, due to, in part, there's been a lot of let's say not 100% serious comments here, but transparency is a thing, right? Who's making the decisions, right? Who decided that this game that was released in 1990 or in 2007 was eligible for a 2021 award? Who decided that this game that didn't have a map was eligible for best map? I mean, so these are things that we had identified as issues.
Yeah.
And we're now happy to be able to say that I'm hoping that the Charles S. Roberts Awards regain the standing that befits the name of Charles S. Roberts, and I hope that they address their issues. And I know that they're trying, because I've talked enough behind the scenes with some of the folks involved, and I know that they're trying, and I hope they do. But in this case, at least we have, an alternate set of awards. I mean, the Hollywood's got 10 sets of awards or something like that, like three or four major ones. Even science fiction literature has two or three major awards, I guess two, but still, so we can accommodate this. And I think that the idea of starting with a small number of awards is a good idea, because it makes the whole thing more manageable. And I know, because I've talked to some of the people involved, that the Charles S. Roberts Awards were very difficult to manage, in part because of the number of awards that they had to run. They had so much data that they had to track. So, and I think that nobody said this, but I think that that's part of the reason why certain things slip through the cracks. Like, there's no map for the game that won best map. So,
too many games to keep track of.
Yeah. Or this game came out 13 years ago and we're just giving it an award now for why nobody knows.
So a couple of, to go into some of that. Yeah, there you go.
This is the exact analogy that I would use. And I love Jethro Tull, but this is the exact, please proceed, Brant. But this is exactly what I was going to say.
Little Wars TV, I think, did an awards thing, but they're focused on the minis wargaming world.
Yes, they are Philistines.
Some background on this now that we've got the big announcement out of the way. This isn't a secret. I had been running Grogheads. No kidding.
Yes.
John's not wrong.
Spinning so fast that if he were a dynamo, he could have generated enough electricity to run the entire city of Flint, Michigan.
It's not a secret. Like, I spent a bunch of years running Grogheads, and folks know that. That's, it's behind me now, and that's fine. And, they're doing great things. And that site is still, Craig and Gus are keeping it running. And that's awesome.
And that's
for a lot of years, we had the Reader's Choice Awards over at Grogheads. And there were two very simple criteria to get involved in the Reader's Choice Awards. Somebody had to nominate you, and you had to actually be released in the year for which we were voting. And so sometimes somebody would nominate something from 2 years ago because they just now discovered it, and we would weed those out. But beyond that, as long as somebody nominated it, we put it up for a vote, and we never pretended otherwise. It was always 100% a popularity contest. That was the only thing we ever cared about. If you got enough votes, you win. And we never, ever pretended otherwise. It was the reader's choice. It was what did the readers want? And there were some years some people kind of quibbled about what category we put things in. But every year after we'd announce the winner, somebody would always say, what do you mean this wasn't even nominated? Well, nobody flipping nominated it, right? We didn't. It's not like we were doing the nominating. The readers.
There was a conspiracy.
Yeah, no kidding. There was an open thread. We opened it on the 1st of January every year. Put in your reader's choice nominations here. And we left it open all year long for people to nominate stuff. If nobody bothered, how good could it have been if nobody bothered to nominate it? And we split it into digital and tabletop categories. Okay, fine. But it was always a popularity contest. It was never a curated thing. about 5 years ago now, well, 4 years ago now, it was around 2017, I think. The Charlies had been dead for like 5 years. They were gone. And we started talking about doing an award like this, a relative prestige award like this. And Gary, I think we'd actually talked to you about it at the time.
Yeah, it was mentioned
back then.
It was mentioned.
Yeah, and we had put together a plan very similar to the one that we're actually executing on, that said, you know, what wargaming needs is an actual prestige award, not a popularity contest. We need something that recognizes excellence in the wargaming world that's beyond just who can marshal the most number of votes. And that was the plan we'd put together, and we were getting ready to run with it. And then, you know, I had left Grogheads. We started the Armchair Dragoons, and it didn't seem, it seemed a little weird for a brand new site, even though, you know, people that knew the folks involved in the site knew we'd been around the wargaming world for a while and that we knew what we were covering and what we were talking about. But it still seemed a little weird for the brand new site to be the sponsor of the cool new prestige awards. And so we sort of tabled it for a year or two, and then the Charlies came back. And so we sort of sat on it because we're like, well, the Charlies are back. Let's see what happens. And then we saw what happened.
Right.
So
now it's
time for a legit prestige award with a little bit of curation involved, and you know, some industry folks who sort of understand what they're talking about, what they're looking at, and not a popularity contest to bring back a little bit of gravitas to the whole thing. And that's what we're shooting for.
Okay. First of all, Andrew, please be careful. So here's the thing,
especially since you're on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah. Well, dude, I don't know if they do that down there. I don't know. Well, he's the Southern Hemisphere, so I assume they drive on the wrong side of the road normally. Anyway, so thing is that those Reader's Choice Awards, right? You have transparency into the process. Yes, it's a popularity contest, but selection bias is built in, right? It's a popularity contest, but it's a popularity contest inside this sort of, I don't want to say closed community, but this community with a certain amount of insulation from the general public.
Yeah,
I think part of the problem at the Charlie Awards, and I don't want to turn this into the Charlie Awards complain fest, because we did that already.
We've done that a couple of times.
Is that it became a general audience vote thing where people who were really not invested in the wargaming hobby at all voted, and we saw what happened. And the lack of curation. So I am really, Fabrizio, hey, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you are not also driving at what would probably be about midnight in Central European time.
And it might be later than that, but
so 6. I think there's 6 hours ahead of us at the moment.
Okay,
I think. In any case.
Yeah, or not imbibing while trying to get anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not driving anywhere.
I got to drive home from the store. Mike's not going to let me stay the night. So yeah, look, you know, Gary teased the super big double secret announcement. That's what we're shooting for. And I saw John Longshore's comment about, you know, judging a World War II game against an Ancients game. Yeah, we are. For the first iteration of this, we are not trying to slice things by era. We're not trying to slice things by card-driven game, by desktop published, none of that crap, right? We're throwing all the games in one bucket, and that's what we're going to do. And we're doing that in part to not drive ourselves crazy. Gonna full honesty there.
Best game on the War of the Austrian Succession.
Yeah, with cards.
I see. I don't have a problem. I mean, I complained about the Ancients to Napoleonic category, but I don't have a problem with that, because either we're segregating by era or we're not, and I'm happy with either decision. But let's make a decision, right?
Yeah.
So I think the notion of keeping the number of actual awards to a quite small number at first. I mean, I expect, you know, as time goes on, that number might expand or even contract. Who knows? That's fine, but you know, you got to be able to run the thing efficiently too. So it needs to be manageable. It needs to be a number of an amount of total data that the people involved can really meaningfully go through and examine and make sure that everything makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that things are eligible for the awards. And this is not necessarily an Oscar type of analogy where it's not eligible for Best Picture. It's eligible for Best Foreign Language Film because it's an American film made by American actors by an American studio, but the language it's spoken in the movie is Spanish or whatever.
Yeah.
This isn't that. This is just the ability to say this game didn't come out in the calendar year that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Or this game didn't have this component that we're giving an award for. So, I mean,
there's a couple of issues at play here. One of them is one of the reasons everybody laughs at the Grammys. Have you seen the list of categories of the Grammys? They have separate categories for hard rock and metal. All right. Mm-hmm. They have separate categories for best traditional jazz, best Latin jazz, best subtropical Latin jazz, best jazz instrumental, best jazz with voice or vocal jazz or whatever it is. They got like 9 categories just for jazz. And none of them are contemporary jazz, which is the most popular selling of all of them.
I don't like jazz that much. I'm good. I'm good with Best John Coltrane Award.
But the point being that they've gotten so granular. They've gotten so granular that it's just an embarrassment. And we're not ever going to, in part because, again, one of the keys in this program is that it's curated, that we have actual people looking at it, making some decisions about what is and isn't eligible and what isn't actually good enough to be under consideration. Just because you got released that year doesn't automatically mean you're eligible. You've got to actually have shown something worth being eligible for. And there's a point at which if we start subdividing into too many categories, like that jury, that panel just can't physically check them all out at that point.
And then you have to start talking about like separate teams per category or category group, and then it becomes this giant project
not doing
that is getting paid for, and that it's therefore very hard to get people to actually do.
Yeah. And so one of I will tell you, the original grouping only had 3 categories. We added the best traditional war game over the past, 6-8 months of discussion around this, in part, quite honestly, as a reaction to what happened with the Charlies, where you had non-war games winning war game categories, and then a bunch of people trying to defend why that was okay that they were in a war game category. That we wanted to very definitively say, okay, at a minimum, there will be a traditional war game category that you got to have hexes, counters, and CRTs to count.
At a minimum, there will be actual war games in our war game awards.
Yes, that. So that was kind of a big deal. We wanted to make sure that.
Good thing I'm not bitter or anything.
Yeah, we wanted those to be a factor. And so, does that mean Twilight Struggle is not eligible for that one? No, it's not gonna be, right? But
Twilight Struggle came out like 1995. That's a problem. We're not talking about whether it's a war game or not. We're talking about whether it was released in this decade.
Yes, there's that too. So I'm still waiting for somebody to nominate chess for a CSR.
Yes, why not? Why not go? Go will win that game every year, by the way. Most ancient game will be that award. Actually, I could do that myself. That would require no work. Go wins again. How about that? Or that game, the game of that was played in ancient Sumeria that Irving Finkel has done videos on YouTube. Check into that if you haven't seen it already. It's actually fairly interesting.
Somebody had recreated a couple of those Norse games. There's like the Norse chess where it's sort of asymmetric sides and you're trying to surround the king kind of.
Man, I was in the SCA for 20 years. I've played that.
Yeah.
So
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the big announcement. Like again, like the comments have been flying by so fast. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the video, in a day or two when the comments populate to YouTube to actually see what I'm saying.
Everything will be visible after the fact, and most of the comments fall into the category of smart guy making a joke, which is great. Don't stop. Or
like we don't.
Thank goodness someone is doing this, because I also was dissatisfied with the way the Charlies went down, and feel there is space in the wargaming hobby for an alternate set of awards that is conducted differently, right? If what we end up with is the Dragoons Awards or whatever we're calling it, and that is this sort of curated thing where you have a panel and then a popular vote that's a factor in the outcome, and then you have the Charles S. Roberts Awards, which is just voted on Board Game Geek by whoever.
Yeah,
I'm completely happy with that outcome. I just want there to be alternatives to say that if we're, because there is in any award. I mean, I could nominate somebody, and it would be, somebody would think it was. My mom maybe would think it was prestigious that Gary gave this person an award, and therefore must be good. So, there is a prestige associated with these things, and I want to see options.
Yeah,
that's my thing. Is I want to see if we're not satisfied with the Charlies, fine, let's fix it. Right.
Yeah. And again, this was originally hatched at a time when the Charlies didn't exist, and we sort of sat on it a little bit because we were still, as the Dragoons, we were still a little new, and we didn't want people, looking at it going, man, we're not going to bother to listen to those guys. That site's not even a year old. We didn't want to get into that.
Gone down, not in the Batman sense.
Yeah. but quite frankly,
topical.
Yeah, there you go. But quite frankly, when the Charlies came back, we had high hopes. Like, we're like, okay, cool, the Charlies are back. We don't need to do this, and it turned out we need to do this.
So here's the other thing, and Charles S. Roberts is, for anybody who doesn't know, which is fantastically unlikely for anyone that's watching this video. Charles S. Roberts was the founder of Avalon Hill. Okay, so he is the founder of the commercial war game hobby. Certainly, war game like things existed before then, and he was not the only person who was a factor. But there is a sense in which Charles S. Roberts himself was the father of our hobby, and Charlie's probably was the only person with that kind of stature who is no longer with us.
Yeah.
So his name being attached to it means a lot, right? And that's why the awards were named after him in the first place, after all. And Origins kind of dropped the whole wargaming thing as part of the Origin. They developed the Origins Awards, and it's the Origins Awards now, and it's for board games and RPGs and whatever else the Origins Awards are given away for. But war games should still be represented.
Well, finish your story. We'll get back to what happened to war games in the.
No, that was basically it.
Okay, so for a long time, the war game awards, there were several different war game categories in the Origins Awards, and quite frankly, you can go back through old issues of the Dragon magazine and see what all the nominees were over the years. Jim Ozarski and I did that on one of our old Dragon magazine shows from back at Crockheads.
I loved those, by the way. I might have been the only one watching them, but please go ahead.
A couple of them managed to hit triple-digit viewers. I keep trying to talk Jim into doing it again, but he's too busy doing Saturday Night Fights. So maybe you and I need to revive that show. I love that show. That was so much fun.
I'd be cool with that. I mean, I don't care if anybody watches that. I'd have fun just talking about it.
Exactly.
That's cool by me. I mean, imagine the amount of mileage I could get out of the old Harn ads alone.
No kidding.
So
we got a lot of mileage just out of the ads in those magazines.
No kidding. Look at this ridiculous item.
Yeah.
Who thought this was a good idea in 1983?
There was a lot of that. You totally killed my train of thought here, Gary. I want you to know that.
I'm distracted by this comment. I'm not sure what Tommy's after. What Tommy's actually after here. James Dunnigan is and remains one of the great geniuses in the history of our hobby.
Tommy's not sure what he's after half the time.
Well, I'm like a half a bottle of, well, I don't know about half, but a lot of scotch down at this point.
So part of what had happened as Origins, as the wargaming cycled away from Origins, there was less impetus for Origins to pay attention to war games in the awards. But even in, as recent as 10, 12 years ago, there were 3 or 4 different categories for war games in the Origins Awards, whether it was mini stuff or traditional tabletop stuff. And they disappeared about 3 or 4 years ago. The historical gaming kind of disappeared from the Origins Awards. And so one of the conversations that I had, because after every Origins, I end up having a chat with a couple of the Gamma dudes about how our stuff went. Like, they do this with all the organizations. It's not just special to us, but whether it's right or not, because we're the ones there running the wargaming program, I think we ended up with a bit of an outsized voice of the wargaming hobby to the Gamma guys, just because we're the only ones talking to them in the wargaming world. It's not that we have any sort of special magical powers in the wargaming world. It's just we're the ones bothering to have a conversation with them. So GMT, MMP, all of you other dudes, go call Gamma and talk to them so I don't have to.
Because that's literally how, I'm not even kidding. That's literally how it's working now.
Yes, that is exactly how it's working out. So I am
so happy that you are this pushy, actually.
Yeah, well, maybe. So I'm on the phone with Paul and with John Stacy after he had become the executive director with a couple other folks, and we were talking about the wargaming stuff, and they were very earnest in their questions of how do we re-engage with wargaming in the show? What are some things we can do? And I said, quite frankly, one of the easiest things you can do is to bring back the wargaming categories in the Origins Awards, because as soon as those disappeared, at that point, any remaining hangers-on kind of threw their hands up and said, Origins doesn't care about wargaming. And we'd been fighting against that impression for so long that it was really hard to make that case anymore once the Origins Award category for wargaming went away. So they brought it back. They brought it back like 2 years ago. I think it was 2019 is when they brought it back. And they brought it back as what it had always been called was best historical board game. And that's always where you found the war games is tucked into the historical wargaming category. And do you happen to know what won best historical board game the year they brought the category back?
I don't remember what it was, but it was
Pandemic
something
Rome.
Yeah.
It was Pandemic Rome. Now, as the category was described by the Origins Awards, Pandemic Rome, driving Gary to drink straight from the bottle at this point. Pandemic Rome met the category of historical board games, a board game based in history on whatever. Like, it absolutely met that category as they described it, rather than going back to the original intent and nominating war games for historical board game. And unfortunately, that they kind of screwed the pooch on that one. And again, talked to him about it, said, hey, we got a bit of a problem here. This isn't really what was intended, but
I wasn't quite what we meant.
Yeah. This like U-boat winning a war game award.
Thanks,
yeah. And so unfortunately, because Origins didn't happen this past year, I got no visibility on what kind of course correction, if any, they'd made. I know there was something done with Origins Awards this past year. Quite frankly, I didn't pay any attention to it because I was too busy trying to, run virtual conventions for us and like get a job, that kind of stuff. So, this past year has been sort of ignoring Origins as a whole, until I talked to Paul a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, look, we're going to submit a bunch of war game events for Origins this year, but oh, by the way, I've got a virtual convention I'm about to do. Let me do that first, and then I'll get back to you. So, on one hand, Origins and Gamma are actually listening. Like, I will give them credit. They are listening. I'm not necessarily willing to give them a ton of credit for following through the way we would like them to, but they are at least listening.
They've got a lot, to be fair, they have a lot going on, of which wargaming represents like 0.5%. And that 0.5% is I'm not even making this up. I mean, this is not even an overstatement or hyperbole. Of which that 0.5% is pretty much the voice of which is Brand. Okay.
Merle weighs in some too.
Well, okay, but so that's NSDM, right? Which is a thing, right? Which is a popular event, and which is a great event, which people should absolutely participate in. But yeah, I mean, somebody remind me, by the way, on Monday to talk about Pandemic Fall of Rome and what a absolutely wasted opportunity that was. So I will now let.
Well, so Gary is very kind in saying that I'm that level of voice with them. I honestly, I'm not sure that I carry that much weight with them, but quite frankly,
I'm not sure you do either.
It's pretty clear, but
you're the one that's putting the most effort into having this discussion with them.
I'm the only one trying to talk to him.
I'm not trying to kiss your ass. We're friends. I don't have to kiss your ass.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, but that the fact is, I mean, I have people coming up to me and we have a general war game discussion. I mentioned the Dragoons, and people will say to me, I mean, people who I know whose names you would recognize say, Brant is pretty much keeping wargaming at Origins for the last 10 years, right? And it's not actually wrong. Some would say I just don't want to quit. Well, stupidity is definitely a part of it, but but at the same time, thanks, because I think we'd still see wargaming at Origins, but we wouldn't see like an official presence, and we wouldn't see some of the magical things that we've seen happen, like that Kriegspiel story, that's how much Scots I've had. Hey, I've had so much scotch. I'm talking like Sean Connery now. Where people like just spontaneously signed up for it because they walked by and thought it was awesome.
But you tell the story about the Kriegspiel. We've had that happen with the CPXs. We had that happen. The Sergeant's Minis game back when Lost Battalion used to show up at Origins pretty regularly. We had that with the Sergeant's Minis game because it looked killer on the table. I mean, it was it's
a neat little game, actually.
But it was visually stunning. When people walked by, they looked at it and went, "Holy cow, what is that? That looks cool." And then they were interested.
It's the perfect miniatures game in many respects. It's miniatures game where I don't have to paint miniatures.
Yeah, no kidding.
Or buy miniatures.
Because they come in the box.
Yeah, exactly. You punch them out and stand them up and off you go.
Yeah. So the Kriegspiel story is a cool story, but it's not the only one of its kind. But, even part of that goes back to when we first started the wargaming program, 2014, when wargaming had been dying on the vine for 5 years at that point. I called up John Ward at Gamma, and I knew John from having dealt with him through War College stuff. And it was a little weird for me when John Ward took over as the president of Gamma, because I was friends with Anthony Gallela, who was his predecessor as the executive director there. And Anthony and I are still friends today. I mean, Anthony and I would deal with each other around Gamma things. I did a big research project for Gamma when I was at Ohio State. I was there as a vendor for a bunch of years before I started working with the War College. But Anthony and I would go to soccer games in the off season. When no gaming stuff was involved, we just go to soccer games and go have fun. Drinking beer and watching the Columbus Crew. And I'm still friends with Anthony to this day. And so it was a little weird when John took over. It's a very different relationship there. But finally, at one point, I called John up and I said, "John, wargaming's dying. I got a bunch of ideas. Tell me what I can get away with." Right? It's sort of the question that I asked. Here's my list of 10 things I would like to try. Which of these will you let me do? And it was pretty much none of them quite. But he did come back and say, here's a bunch of things you can do. How about any of these things? All right, let's try them. Let's see what happens. And we've been trying stuff ever since. And we've tried all kinds of stuff over the last 5, 6, 7 years. We tried a kids program to see if we get the kids playing, and unfortunately it turned into glorified babysitting, which was a downer. But we tried. We gave
it's a great idea.
We gave it our best effort for a couple of years. It didn't pan out. We said we're not doing that anymore. Yeah, but we've tried a couple of different things like that, just to try stuff and see what happens. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. And as Chris Weave likes to say, the experiment was a success. We learned not to do that again. We've tried that a couple of times, and some stuff has worked, some stuff hasn't. The program has evolved over the last 5, 6 years. We, quite frankly, we have a lot more flexibility internally, that we just sort of show up to Paul and the event guys at Gamma and say, here's our list of stuff we're doing, put us in the program, and then we're done. They don't have to think about the stuff they're doing for us. They just got to give us the final count of tables, and we deal with all of it ourselves. And that makes their lives a little bit easier. And that's what gives us a lot of autonomy is the easier we can make things for them, the more leeway they give us to do stuff. And that's what we've been able to do. So, but again, you're right. I'm the only one there banging on their door saying, hey, can we do stuff? And it would be nice, quite frankly, if there were other war gamers there also banging on the door saying, hey, can we do stuff, instead of it always being me. I'm not bitter. I'm not pissed about it. Well,
I feel targeted by that, actually.
Yeah, I'm not pissed by it at all, but
I'm trying to do a different thing. But let me ask this: so given the leadership change now, pandemic aside, right? Because the pandemic has thrown a lot of otherwise perfectly respectable plans into total chaos. So pandemic aside, in what way does it feel now like the leadership change at Gamma has impacted your ability to present war games at Origins? Or we know yet? We don't know yet is an acceptable answer here.
We don't fully know, but I will tell you that there are two kind of trends that I'm noticing just over the last couple. So the changeover from John Ward to John Stacy happened shortly before Origins 2019, which was the last Origins we'd actually held. And so John Stacy was nominally in charge, but a lot of that stuff was already on rails by the time he took over. So there wasn't much that he had to do in the way of decision making. But based on the conversations after that and the ones leading up to what would have been Origins 2020 and now leading into 2021, two things kind of that I've noticed. One is John Stacy is much more hands-off than John Ward was. John Stacy delegates a lot more of the decision-making that I've dealt with. Now, again, I don't know if this applies to everybody else, but the stuff that I've dealt with is a lot more of it has been delegated to the staff at Gamma rather than John getting his hands on it himself the way John Ward did. That's one thing that I've seen. So we don't have the ear of the guy in charge quite as much as we used to. Okay, fine. The flip side of it is the guys that we are dealing with more directly have given us a lot of autonomy to be able to sort of do our own thing. As long as we're not making headaches for them, they're willing to leave us alone. And so that, I think that's given us a little more range to experiment with some ideas. It gives us the ability to put different games on tables. One of the things John Ward was very emphatic about was, if we've got games on tables as official events in the wargaming space, the companies need to be in the exhibit hall. And that's why for a couple of years there, we had a bunch of lock and load stuff because David Heath had lock and load in the exhibit hall or co-located with us in the gaming hall. It's why we didn't have MMP stuff on the shelf at all, on the program at all, because nobody had it on their shelves. Enterprise Games, you mentioned Enterprise Games is there as the official rep of GMT.
Yeah. And so GMT is there.
Yes. GMT is not physically present themselves, but they've got an official rep there, and Enterprise Games is the sponsor of the GMT stuff we do. Not only that, but I believe for several years, and I think it's still in place, Enterprise had an exclusivity agreement with GMT that nobody else in the exhibit hall was allowed to sell GMT stuff. That Enterprise
that certainly lines up with my extensive experience of combing the exhibit hall for war games.
Yes, that could well be.
EnterpriseGames.com, not a paid sponsorship, but Don is a great guy, and I would highly encourage you to check that website out. He has tons of great old stuff and new stuff at very reasonable prices. Yeah,
Don is awesome, and Don has been a fantastic partner to work with at Origins. He really has been. But what do we got,
John Smallberries?
No, they're not. No, it just so happens that the last two.
But that's very good.
They just both happen to be named John. So
the red electroids.
Yeah. One of the things with dealing with John Ward over the years that I did like. So John, a lot of decisions John Ward made were not necessarily ones I agreed with. And that's no secret. I've talked about it before on podcasts and on broadcasts like this. And, people that have asked me about stuff at Origins, I've never made a secret about the fact that there are quite a few decisions John Ward made that I didn't agree with. But the one thing John Ward always did, and I will always give him absolute credit and praise for it, John always took the time to explain why he made that decision. You were never left wondering what black box that decision came out of. John would say, here's the policy, here's how we're enforcing it, here's the decision. And you never had a question about why things were being done the way they were. You could disagree with it. God knows I did plenty, but I was never left wondering why. And that was, to John Ward's credit forever, for the 8 years that he was in charge of Gamma, I never had to wonder why they made the decision they did. John Stacy tends to delegate those decisions to his people. And for the most part, it's been a pretty decent relationship of them explaining why they've made certain decisions. The flip side of it is, after 6-7 years of dealing with them at this point, and largely the same staff members at Gamma. So that's important. The leadership changed, but the same staff in place.
Up till last year anyway.
Well, but the people that I'm mainly dealing with are the same folks. Paul McGraw is still there.
Okay. My experience is different from that. So, yeah, but I haven't dealt with the same people. I've dealt with like the PR side of things, where it was Danny for quite a few years, who was fantastic. And actually, her replacement is pretty great too. So I have no cause for complaint there.
Yeah, I've had very little interaction with George. Danny's predecessor was kind of a pain in the neck. Danny was fantastic. Danny was a lot like Paul McGraw in that they just made headaches go away. They just erased problems for you, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. And her successor, I feel bad now, whose name I can't remember, possibly because of the Scotch. But I mean, I had that problem in 2019, which was the last Origins, and they made that problem go away. So the boardroom problem mentioned earlier.
Danny's successor is George.
We're operating at different levels here, you and I, Brant. You're operating with the big shots. I'm operating with the underlings that are being delegated to.
Well, but those underlings, like Paul McGraw is one of those underlings. They've been fantastic to deal with, and with several years of having dealt with them now, I kind of know what I can get away with without having to ask them, which is a big plus. And again, part of this goes back to not that Brant's got any magical superpowers to make stuff happen or anything. It's just that I've bothered to have that conversation with them where I think a lot of other people haven't.
I agree. You're not that charming, actually. But you're putting in the effort to have the discussions, and actually that's what's important, because there's a lot. I mean, those folks, to be fair, and I've complained about Gamma to the end of time, but they have a lot going on, right? Mm-hmm. And they have other things happening that are Gamma responsibilities other than Origins too. So it's more about the fact of someone is having the discussion with them than the fact that anybody has any magical hold over anybody.
And I think part of what helps too is that I'm doing work for them, so it's work they don't have to do. But I will also say that one of the frustrations from my seat a little bit in all of this is that it almost feels like if I took a year off, the wargaming program's dead. Like there's nobody else that's going to step up to deal with it. And I would love to be able to sort of hand this off to somebody at some point that I could take a year and just go play games like you've done for a lot of years. I would love to just wander around, play games, take pictures, and spend money and not have to worry about, oh my God, are we turning in the tickets right? Yeah, I would love to have that Origins experience at some point, but I need somebody to take over, running the wargame stuff for a change.
You may have to have that experience at a different convention, to be honest.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
The 1 year that I didn't run the wargaming area was actually 2015, and Doug Miller took over and ran it for us. And it was the same crew, just without me and James Starrett there. But it was largely the same crew. It was still, Jim Ozarski and Doug Miller, and Vance was there, and Jim Snyder was there. I'd gotten laid off a couple of months right before Origins, and there was no way I could justify spending the money to go to Origins when I needed to be looking for a job. And then it also turned out, but then it also turned out that year, that summer was the summer that my father-in-law had a stroke, and my wife had to go, stay with family to help take care of her mom. And there was just no traveling at that point. It was not happening. So I ended up missing a year, and it did run, but it largely ran because we already had the plan in place, and we just had to put a different person in charge of the existing plan. So, Fabrizio, Gary, this is going to be one of those things where you and I are going to have a whole separate show on this, but the idea of bringing in new wargamers and what does it take for a new wargamer to show up and actually become a part of this hobby? I will tell you, after having tried for a couple of years, it's not the kids. It's not. You can't go get them at 8 years old and 10 years old. That just doesn't work. The college kids, I think we could get some college kids. You're not getting the 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds. I've tried. I've tried for 4 or 5 years, and I've got the track record to show it. It's just not working.
The kids don't have the money.
Part of it is the kids don't have the money. Part of it is, quite frankly, I don't think the kids have the maturity to understand what's on the table in front of them. And we all look at it and go, oh, big tank, go boom, ha, ha, ha. And, that's fun to an extent, but that's not necessarily the same level gateway that we really need to get them turned into ASL players. And so we are now off into a whole separate show that we don't have time to deal with because they're going to lock the doors here in about 2 minutes.
Well, we should have that show. So I will badger you about that at a later time. But I'll tell you offhand that I've had better luck with college professors than I've necessarily had with college students, who are typically super stressed out, don't have enough time to do anything. College professors have more disposable income and a little more leisure time. So one of our local mainstays is a mathematics professor at OSU, actually. So
Yep, absolutely. So I've got some hard-earned thoughts on how that can and should work going forward, and I'll definitely want to have those conversations at some point. We're just out of time tonight.
Okay, so in terms of Armchair Dragoons website is linked in the video description, so anybody that's interested in the Armchair Dragoons, there's forums, which is a thriving little war game discussion community, and of course we have the event happening right now, so please check that out. Again, linked in the video description. For those who are interested in the awards, when can we expect to hear some more news, and where will we see that?
So you're going to, at a minimum, everything we're doing with the Dragoons is on our site, right? Armchairdragoons.com. You're going to find it all there. There's going to be some discussion area in the forums. As much as possible, we make those announcements also over on Twitter, on Board Game Geek, on Concept World, on yada, 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 right? All the usual places you're expecting to find those things. We do share the information there, but the anchor is our site, and that's where you're going to find all the key information. I don't think we're going to try to hurry anything up to get the awards in place for Origins 2021 simply because the timeline is way too darn compressed. We can't move that fast. I'd love to. We can't move that fast. What I would expect to see happen is towards the end of this calendar year, you will start to see some information come out that says, here's when and how the voting is going to start. Here's when and how we're expecting those lists to be released such that the panel can put things together shortly after the new year. February, March-ish time frame is when I expect the public voting to be happening. For the public involvement. Again, the public doesn't decide all of these things, but we want to give the public a voice. And so off of the curated list that the panel comes up with, we will give the public a voice within that panel. And again, the target is giving away the awards at Origins because we've got a lot of folks there in the building together. Let's have
which for 2022 we expect to be in June. I think it's June.
That's the plan. Yeah. It's. Okay. At this point, Origins has kind of taken over Father's Day weekend. This seems to be the weekend that they're gonna own in June to do these things. And so, look, ideally, if we're giving, if we're giving Volko an award for best, like maybe we can get Volko to show up and actually accept it in person.
That'd be cool.
It would be very cool.
I'd love to meet Volko. Actually, get that, make that happen.
Sure. One of these days, we're going to actually do a Dragoons convention in person, and we may end up doing it in DC simply because
he's down
there.
Yeah, exactly. He's down in that general area, so he's not all that far.
Nope. So, the guy that'll be a headache to get show up is Brian Train because he's on the other side of the flipping continent.
He's in British Columbia.
I know.
I mean, I by all means, but if you could,
I got him to show up at Connections one year when it was at NDU in DC.
Okay, that's awesome, actually. But all right, so folks, I think we're out of time at this point. Brant, thanks for joining us. I am about 80% in the absolute bag at this point. This is like at least 3 times as much scotch as I typically drink on Monday nights. So I am going to call it while I still have the wherewithal to call it, and then I'm going to go to bed. So I would like to thank Brant for
still got his shirt on.
Yes, that's good for us all. So again, link in the video description for the Armchair Dragoons digital convention. So please do check that out. Please do sign up. Please do check out the very aggressive event list. I'd like to thank Brant for stopping by and participating. I'd like to thank all of you for stopping by. We topped out at about 61 people from my count here, which is pretty fantastic for the time slot that we are in. Especially I'd like to thank shout outs for everybody that has participated in the chat, but especially those participants from the other side of the planet are particularly appreciated. So again, thanks everybody. I really while driving, he's like tuning in while driving. Please be safe. Do not do that. Andrew, stop that. You can listen to this afterwards. It's okay. Yeah, so please, I would much rather see Andrew Rowland's next game than have Andrew Rowland in the chat tonight and see it right. Exactly. So please don't do that. We've had enough of that in the last year. I'm good with that. So again, thanks everybody, and stay tuned to this channel on Monday night where we have the counter clipping stream. If you don't check that out normally, and hopefully we'll be back to a more regular schedule next week.
Yeah, and thanks to Gary for hosting this.